Right. I think YouTube is now live as well. Let's get started. Tesla is up 0.7%. Overall markets are turning down after a major revision to the GDP now number. We're going to get into that. I want to dig into the details of that a little bit. I think Bitcoin is up a couple. Let's see where the Bitcoin is. Bitcoin has been plunging lately. Now it's at 84,000. Earlier today, it was at as low as $78,000. So massive volatility in crypto markets. Thank you for letting me know that audio is good on YouTube as well. Perfect. All right. Let's see. Let's see what else is new. Oh, Luce is here. What an early participant. I'm trying to get Meta in here too today to discuss some AI related stuff. All right, let's kind of read through this Reuters article to see what the deal is. Everything's pretty much down. Oil is down below $70 per barrel. Yields are down a few basis points today, mostly in the 2 to 5 year yield. So the 5-year yield is down 7 basis points to almost 4%. And 10-year yield is down about 5 basis points to 4.23. So yields are coming down. Earlier today, we got the PCE reports. I think came in a bit higher than expected, just a slightly higher than expected. We can dig into that too. So I'm going to just take my notes here. We're going to dig into the PCE number, and then we're going to dig into the GDP now revisions. And then just a couple of notes after that. Maybe we can talk some NVIDIA, we can talk some Intel. Lucia, how are you?
Hey, yeah, man, all good. How are you?
I'm good too. Any thoughts on Tesla, NVIDIA, Intel, macroeconomics, overall markets? You want to start us out, or do you want me to just read this Reuters article first?
Well, let me start with Intel just a second. I think I will be damned as you, the same way because I sold my Intel shares. There was, in my opinion, a big news that the Ohio plant was just being delayed not 6 months, not 1 year, from 2027 to 2030-31.
That's
Huge.
wild. That's wild.
What is happening with AI demand? What is happening with AI? Incredible, in my opinion.
Yeah, let me read that news real quick. Intel, let's see. Intel has delayed the opening of its first Ohio semiconductor factory to 2030. The delay was attributed to financial struggles and the need to align chip production with market demand. Intel says it remains committed to its Ohio project and has already invested $3.7 billion locally. Intel promised $28 billion semiconductor project in central Ohio has been delayed again, this time by several years. The chipmaker told the Dispatch late Thursday that its first factory in the Licking County portion of New Albany would not be completed until 2030 and would begin operation sometime shortly thereafter in either 2030 or 2031, a sign of just how much remains in flux despite the company's commitment to its Ohio One operation. By the time it opens, Intel's first factory will have faced at least 5 or 6 years of delays, as it was originally scheduled to begin operating in 2025. Intel's second Ohio factory won't be completed until at least 2031 and will begin running in 2032, according to the company. The new timeline comes as Intel continues to struggle financially, which has a key factor in the latest delay in the company's Ohio factories. The company was alerting its employees of the delays in a message Friday. The changes were made so Intel can align its factory operation with market demand and better manage our capital responsibly, Executive Vice President said. Blah, blah, blah. The changes will ensure Intel's Ohio fabs will be finished in a financially responsible manner. Fuck you, bullshit. I wanted to be upfront and transparent. Okay. Part of a larger effort to bring semiconductor manufacturing back to the US. I mean, these things are easier said than done, as we discussed before. Lucia, go ahead.
So I just wanted to compliment what I said. There are two phases to this story. The first,
I
a
don't think
very
I care. I don't think I really care. I think Intel is a dud.
maybe.
Okay. All right. I'm going to read this other kind of overall story here. And then if we have time, we can get back to that. Wall Street mixed in choppy trading after consumer spending falls in January. February 28th, Reuters. Wall Street's main indices were mixed in choppy trading on Friday as investors avoided large bets after data showed consumer spending fell in January, exacerbating worries that the world's largest economy might be stalling. A Commerce Department report showed that inflation rose in line with expectations in the previous month. However, consumer spending, which accounts for more than two-thirds of the economy, dropped 0.2% after an upwardly revised 0.8% increase in December. Spending came in lower than we were looking for. Most of it I would attribute to a cooling economy, which presents a dilemma for the Fed in the sense that you still have inflation and you have an economy that is moving lower. If you add them together, that equals stagflation, Peter Cardillo, chief market economist at Spartan Capital Securities, said. Friday's report is important for investors trying to gauge the central bank's next policy move after policymakers reiterated a hawkish stance on interest rates. Yeah, I mean, I think this is kind of like this is a problem for the markets. I think markets are kind of expecting the Fed to come to the rescue. If markets starts going down, you get like a 10, 15, 20% drop. I don't think that's going to be the case. I don't think the Fed is, waiting at the edge of its, seat to start helping the stock market this time around. I think this inflation being stuck around 3% is a big deal. And, I was looking at some numbers today, and as we discussed, core CPI year over year is above 3% today. Core PCE is 2.6%. Core CPI is 3.2%. If you look at quarterly annualized percent change in Q1, quarterly annualized percent change in Q1 is 3.9%, both headline and core CPI. 2.8%, both headline and core PCE. These are as of today. So you're looking at a 3% inflation, a persistent 3% inflation. In the face of that, I just don't see how the Fed can cut. So every time these markets fall, we're seeing a bit more, probability of a cut in the first half of the year, kind of increasing. But I think markets are jumping ahead of their skis here, or ahead of the facts here. So right now, if I look at it, the probability of a cut in March, probable cut in 3 weeks is 7%. Okay, so the market is pricing in no cut for March. In May, probability is more than 30%. So there's 1 in 3 chance, according to the markets, that there's going to be a cut in May. And unless we get into a situation where things are clearly falling off a cliff, where you lose market functionality, I just don't see how the Fed cuts in the first half of the year here. So June probability is seen as 80%. So 80% probability of a cut in June, by June, okay? And there's also 22% probability of a 50 basis point cut, 1% probability of a 75 basis point cut by June. I mean, it's just like, it's almost like people are ignoring these inflation numbers. And a lot of, like, I see out and about on X and elsewhere, people are justifying recent readings with seasonality adjustments. And I mean, I guess you can get away with that for January because seasonality adjustments in January are the highest. But if that also happens in February, if February numbers come in a little high tomorrow, next week. So next week, we're going to get the unemployment numbers next Friday. And then the following week, we're going to get inflation numbers. So second week of March, if inflation numbers come in slightly higher than expected again, you're going to have a real big problem in the markets. And, I'm not seeing shelter. Housing prices are not coming off the boil just yet. They're about to turn down, but they haven't yet. And, the recent 50, 75 basis point drops in mortgage rates are kind of, I think, keeping that fall off at um, housing is not falling off yet. And then also used car prices have shown a bit of a strength as well. So car insurance hasn't come down. Travel is slowing down, but it hasn't turned down. Construction has slowed down, but it hasn't really turned down. And we really don't see any like massive cracks in the economy just yet. Nobody can really point out to like, okay, this is why there's going to be a recession. Like, we see some delinquencies rising, but the defaults are not there yet. So housing, there's some home equity baked into these, household balance sheets. So I just don't see why the Fed would cut in the next few months. So I don't know. All right, let's continue with this article. A Commerce Department showed that inflation rose in line with expectations in the previous month. However, consumer spending, which accounts for more than two-thirds of the economy, dropped 0.2% after an upwardly revised 0.8% increase in December. Spending came in lower than we were looking for. Friday's report is important for investors trying to gauge the central bank's next policy move, after policymakers reiterated a hawkish stance on interest rates. The fear has been that the new Donald Trump administration's policies, especially trade restrictions, could lead to a rise in domestic inflation. Traders see the Fed lowering borrowing costs twice by December, little change from before the report, according to data compiled by LSEG. Okay, so this was earlier. If I look at it now, for December, we're looking at, yeah, that's 2 to 3 rate cuts. It's more like 3 rate cuts, actually, not 2 anymore. So the markets are pricing in more rate cuts than I think the Fed is willing to signal at this point. Traders see the Fed lowering borrowing costs by twice by December, little changes from before the report, according to data compiled. Investors will assess comments from the Chicago Fed President Austin Goolsbee later in the day. I wonder when he's speaking. Let me see some market data here. Pretty much unchanged. Volatility index touched a 1 month high, was up at 21.26. Oh, that's interesting. So VIX is increasing here. 21.55 right now. Yeah, highest in a month. And the only other time it's been higher than this level is December 18. What happened to December 18? There's a surge in VIX at that point. Interesting. Okay. Multiple recent reports suggesting a stalling economy and concerns that tech companies such as Nvidia and Microsoft might be overspending on AI infrastructure have put Wall Street's main indices on track for monthly declines. S&P 500 logged declines of 5 of the past 6 sessions and is set for the biggest 1 month drop since April 2024. The tech-heavy Nasdaq is down about 9% from its all-time high and is headed for its steepest 1 month fall since September 2023. Nvidia fell 2% after an 8.5% slide in the previous session after the chip giant's weaker than expected quarterly gross margin forecast overshadowed an upbeat revenue outlook. Dell lost, that's the other thing I want to look at. Let me just jot that down real quick. So we want to look at, give me 1 second. We want to look at Dell. I want to look at GDP now. And that peer HP fell 7% after its quarterly profit forecast missed. I mean, there's a trend here. Like all these, um, uh, Dell forecast a decline in its adjusted gross margin rate for fiscal 2026. I mean, that's a big one. Where is Dell stuck right now? Down 7%. Yeah. Look at that. I mean, the CEO was selling billions of dollars 6 months ago, so that should have been a signal for people. Okay, and PCE. All right. Anything else? Trump's latest threat to slap an extra 10% duty on imports from China hit U.S. listed China stocks such as Alibaba and Japan, which fell 3 and 6.5% respectively. NetApp plunged 11% after data storage firm lowered its annual results forecast. Walgreens fell 5% after reports said private equity firm Sycamore Partners closing in to buy out the pharmacy chain. Interesting. Um, all right. So Nasdaq is faring worse than NYSE right now. Interesting. All right. Oh, Meta is here. Let's talk some AI. Let's talk some AI. Meta, how are you?
Good. I don't have a ton of time today, but I figured we could chat NVIDIA and
Yeah,
probably GPT-4 and a few other things. 4, 5, sorry.
yeah. Where do you want to start?
Uh, I'll just give you the topics. Maybe you can do a pick and choose. I think the fun topics to talk about will be Claude Sonnet, GPT-4, 5, and NVIDIA earnings slash the post that I tagged you in around
All right, let me ask you
some
one
of the
thing.
GPU demand data.
Let's start with Grok.
Sure,
Is
we can start.
Grok the world's smartest AI?
We've had this conversation before, and I'll use that metaphor again. It's difficult to define the best athlete because there are many different sports. And so in some sports, yes, Gronk is the best athlete. In other sports, no.
Which sports is Grok the best in? 100 dash, or is it the best in curling?
I don't know how to pick the sport, but it would be the sport where money does F1. It's the best at F1. It's the best at a sport where money doesn't matter. You spend a ton of money, but it goes pretty fast and it does some funny things. Every now and then it does some dangerous crashes. It's F1. Grok is F1.
Really? I mean, F1 is a pretty important sport, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it is. It is a pretty important thing. Okay, you know what? Grok is F1 before they had caps on the teams for how much they could spend.
That's funny. So you're saying that because he was able to buy billions and billions of dollars of chips, um, they can do
Eight
it
to
with
ten
lower
billion, but
taxes.
who's counting?
How
Yes,
much?
8 to 10 billion, right?
Oh,
Roughly
wow. Now, I thought you
35 to
were
40K a chip and 200,000 chips. Do the math.
okay. So hold on. I'm going to move everybody down, Lucha. Sorry. I'm going to move it. No new speakers being accepted right now. Okay. Sorry, Stephen. Um, so So the idea before Grok 3 was Grok 3 will be the ultimate test if scale laws still hold. Because if you spend, 10x the money, 10x the GPUs, does that mean you get a substantial increase? So in your mind, if you were the advisor, the GPU purchasing advisor, would you advise Google or um, Amazon or Meta or Microsoft or other players, many other players in the industry to increase their spend by 10x?
No.
Yeah. Why is that?
So, okay, we can the post. I maybe you want to pin it here. I don't know how you want to go about it, but I don't remember everything that's in the post. But the post did talk about how theoretically, it seems like maybe one of the reasons why GPT-4 5 is as expensive as it is because they struggle to really string together lots of GPUs. I don't know if that's true or if Elon's just pushing that narrative, but it does seem plausible. Grok did pull off one giant node of 200,000 GPUs. That's amazing. If you want to have the losses, so like if it's getting 80% on an exam and you want to get to 90%, or another exam it's getting 95, you want to get to 97.5. If you want to make that half step, and you do nothing else, and all you do is lean on the scaling laws, you're gonna have to spend 80 to $100 billion. Okay, and if you want to do it again, now we're talking trillions of dollars. At some point, it stops working. Like $1 trillion company can't spend $1 trillion on compute. That's just
Right.
not going to work. So
Right.
we know we're either one step away or two steps away from the end. And I would argue spending 10% of a company's value on machines doesn't make sense because ultimately they're still going to hit that cap. We've hit the plateau. So now you have to lean on the other three scaling factors in order to make further progress. You can't just lean on uh, larger compute and larger models.
Which AI do you think has the best algorithms today? Which AI company? Most efficient, the most effective?
Gemini would be the most efficient. DeepSeek would be second, and you can see this from Open Router data and from pricing data.
I can see this from where you said?
Open Router
Yeah.
and pricing. I like Open Router as a dashboard a lot. LMSys is really, really good. I'm not shitting on LMSys when I say this. I want to make it clear. Two things can be good. LMSys is really good for getting key insights into why things are good and how things are going, and like slicing and dicing data and kind of getting a feel for it and playing with it yourself. However, LMSys is like really good market research, and like those companies that go and talk to a bunch of users and they do like what do people like, etc. But the reality is, no matter how much focus grouping you did, you were never going to get a touch screen coming out of that group, right? People don't know what the possibilities are. What's great about Open Router is it's more like the stock market. It's a marketplace. It just shows you where app developers are spending their money. So if we want to look at it from an engineering perspective, it's dollars that I think matters most. And so you can see, well, if all these app developers are choosing to use these apps, that's a good indication, at least on the API pricing, who's winning on a quality per dollar perspective. And then, of course, if we had the data, I would love to see like the subscription data for all the other companies, but nobody's really, except for one company, they're all private. So
Yeah.
there's no like way to really get that
Microsoft
data.
CEO Satya saying in an interview that no one's sharing their inference data, whatever. I mean, OpenAI said they have about 10 million, 12 million subscribers back in September. They haven't updated that number, and I feel like there's a lot of churn. I think just like FSC, people subscribe for a month or two and then switch, and then
Yes.
etc.
It's also tricky because, like, when Grok is free for everybody, now they can claim every single X user is a user, right? If you used it even once out of curiosity, your 30-day user is insanely high, but you're going to see a drop off. And just going based on the gaming sector, 3% retention is considered really good after a launch. I remember when Pokemon Go came out, they had a 10% retention, and that was like, oh, mind blowing, right?
Yeah,
It just seemed like this massive game because the retention was so high.
yeah. Okay. You said according to pricing that the Gemini and DeepSeek have the best algorithms. Um, can you say for sure that DeepSeek is not being subsidized by the Chinese government?
No, I can't say anything for sure like that. No,
Right.
of course
Right.
not.
Yeah.
I don't think so, though. I think that like the paper stands on its own. I don't think
Where does
it's not
OpenAI stand in
required.
that ranking?
After 4.5, they are at the very bottom.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
Anthropic passed them, DeepSeek passed them, Google passed them, Grok passed them.
So ChatGPT 4.5 is DOA.
Oh yeah, unless you want to pay $100 when you could pay 7.5 cents.
Why? So what makes you say they're so much worse than wait, $100 per million tokens?
Yeah, it might be helpful. Let me pull up the pricing chart. A lot of people have made pricing charts now. I'm
And
just doing
DeepSeek is 7.5 cents?
let me just find you a chart. I'm sure I can find one pretty quickly. I've seen a bunch of them, but I don't have one like readily available in my screenshots.
Yeah,
I failed.
that's okay. But you're saying basically API pricing, ChatGPT 4.0 is just horrible. GPT 4.0. 4.5.
4.5 is
Yeah,
absolutely ridiculous. It's
really.
like laughably bad. To me, it's like somebody asked where is Sam, and he said he was like taking care of his kid. I have a feeling like if Sam was in the office, maybe it it seems so stupid. I would have never released it. It seems so stupid.
Really? What do you mean by it seems so stupid?
To release it at all. Like it's like,
But
hey, I know you.
is the model better? Like, let's forget the price for a second. Is it better than 4.0?
Mm, no, I don't think so. Not. I mean, like that's a hard answer to give without thinking about pricing. It's not okay. Even ignoring pricing, there are places where quality wise it's regressed.
Really?
Yeah,
What do you think caused that?
I mean that's just naturally going to happen when you train a much larger model and you give it a lot more things. There's going to be conflicts. Like I do find it funny. Like this is a theory, no facts. I can't really prove these things, but like a lot of people are looking at the question of like, is 9.11 bigger than 9.9, which it's not. However, 9.11 is bigger than 9.9
Right.
because we were talking about a software version. So without that context, like people like to harp on it. It's like, okay, it looks stupid, but honestly, you asked an ambiguous question. Like if somebody asked, "Is Paris hot?" Are they talking about the city or the person, like Paris Hilton?
Right.
Ambiguity leads to garbage in, garbage out.
Okay. If you had all the money in the world today, how much would you pay to buy OpenAI?
I wouldn't. Well, I guess. Do I have the option to buy other companies?
No, I mean, yeah, you had the option to buy other companies. So you're saying OpenAI is basically worthless at this point.
If I could buy any of the other 5 companies, OpenAI would not be the company I would buy.
At any price. Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so you said Anthropic passed that? Anthropic works with Amazon's Trainium and Inferentia, right?
Yeah. So Claude used to be the most expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Man, why is this so hard to find? I've seen so many screenshots of this before.
So Claude by Anthropic has passed ChatGPT. Is Claude trained exclusively on Trainium?
No, I think they have a contract with Google and AWS.
Okay, but no NVIDIA GPUs.
Correct. Oh, here I found.
What? Are you serious? So Claude
Well, no,
trained?
AWS is probably using NVIDIA GPUs.
Oh, okay.
I found one of them here. Do you mind if I post it?
No, it's fine. Go ahead.
All right, I'm posting one with a whole bunch of pricing. What's not on this is GPT 4.5.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do a quick search for GPT 4.5, you can get their pricing too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's much much larger.
But so, like, the thing is, like, with these pricings, we don't know if any of these companies are subsidizing this pricing. Like, for example, Google's subsidizing Waymo. How can we know that they're not subsidizing Gemini?
So the question would be, you could kind of rationalize a little bit, right? Like, let's say they are subsidizing it. Could they be subsidizing it by 100x as a public company and hide that data in the earnings? Wouldn't you see that?
I don't know. I mean, they could. I mean, I don't know. I have no idea. I have no idea. I would have to do it back. I don't have any
Here's
information.
my back of the envelope that
Yeah.
makes it kind of brain dead. Every Google search has, like, a lot of the Google searches now have AI summaries on them. That's a lot. That's a lot of
Yeah,
volume
that's
to
true.
hide somewhere.
Yeah, that's true. Wow. So
Okay.
Gemini
I just
came
posted
back.
the 4.5 pricing as well. So it's 75, 37.5 for cash input, which is so stupid. Like, you should just not even consider the cash input thing, right? Like, if you're going to use cash input, you might as well just store the request and response on your side and not even use their service. Right? They're basically saying, if you ask me the exact same question twice and you want a different answer, I'll charge you 50%. It's okay.
Mm,
Who does that?
yeah.
Most people who have an application that are going to do that stuff are just going to store it on their end. So it's kind of a silly thing. But their output price is $150. Their input price is $75. Compare that to 7.5 cents and 30 cents.
Wow.
Actually,
That
but
makes
that's not a fair comparison. It would be probably like compared to 10 cents and 40 cents, to be totally fair.
why?
Because I was looking at the mini model. So,
Mm,
right, the light arguably is more like the mini model, but the flashlight is doing better on benchmarks. It's more, the question is, do you compare by quality or do you compare by size? I think you should compare by quality, not by size.
of course. Yeah, I agree with you. That's amazing. I didn't realize Flash. How is Flashlight doing better than Flash?
Well, because flashlight is cheaper, it's smaller. That's why it's gonna be cheaper.
No, I understand, but it's also doing better on quality.
No, it's not doing better on quality, but if you look at the LMSys dashboard, it's doing better than many of the other large models.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay. That's incredible. Where's Grok on this list?
Grok isn't on here yet because they don't have an API.
Okay.
So I did back out the calculation myself. If you look at the rate limits that Grok has imposed, it's 25 every 3 hours, and they charge either $30 or $40 a month. And so you can kind of like back out the numbers. If I recall correctly, doing the math, it was 1.2. Let me do it again. Hold on.
Yeah. I mean, I don't care about it so much, but I immediately canceled my second Grok application. I mean, the membership. I had my macro analyst account also was premium plus, and I just after they increased price from like whether it was 10 to 40 or something, I'm like, fuck this, I'm not paying that. It's ridiculous. You know. A year or two from today, who do you think is going to be the better LLM?
I mean, that's hard to predict. DeepSeek and Grok and Claude and Gemini seem like the ones that are contending in a real race right now. The most recent showing of OpenAI, like the that was a major mistake in my opinion. I think OpenAI plummeted to the bottom. So it's easier for me to answer who's doing worse right now, just based on the data out there, than who's doing well. I think Claude is the most under appreciated because like they're a company that they don't have X, they don't have Google's data, they don't have Microsoft's data, and they're still competing.
How are they doing that?
It's very good engineers. Like you could, and I don't know if you know Anthropic's history, but it was a lot of engineers at OpenAI who had issues with Sam before all of the, what did Helios see stuff around safety. And they said, we don't like how OpenAI is doing a bunch of stuff that's not safe, telling people how to make nukes, telling people how to like make pipe bombs, all that kind of shit.
That's
They're
what
like,
Grok is doing
ethics.
now.
I know. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's bad. Like, here's my opinion on this matter. In my personal opinion, the number one rule as a human should be don't be a hypocrite. So when Elon came out and asked for a pause because he criticized OpenAI for what they did, as did many other leaders, he should apply that same rule to himself
It's a
now.
joke. It's a fucking joke. I mean, I can't trust the guy at all anymore. Like a lot of the stuff that he says, like you said, it's kind of like talking both sides of his mouth.
Well, you could argue.
I mean, when he
I'm playing
says,
devil's advocate.
OpenAI shouldn't be for profit, but then emails come out, he's kind of
Yeah,
recommending
you
the
want to make
thing.
it for profit himself.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what the fuck, dude? Doesn't make any sense. I mean, X was supposed to be free speech. There's now all sorts of examples of how free speech is being constrained. Accounts are being deleted.
Did you see the system message in Grok?
Yes, I did. It's fucking a joke. It's a joke. It's a fucking joke. What a disappointment.
Hey, all I'm gonna say is we used to have spaces back in the day when you were on me about how you can't name another CEO. There's
Yeah.
no one, blah blah blah. All right, I will accept your
Well, he
apology.
changed though. Like I couldn't have seen back in 2022 that he was going to become this like insanely political
You and I just had
extremist.
slightly different time horizons on this, and that's okay. We don't need to dig into
Yeah.
why.
I mean, I thought like even last year, I thought after the election that he was just going to go back to Tesla, and man, that the opposite has happened. He's become more extremist.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna change. I think this is a trajectory, not a temporary phase. I think it's copium to think it's a temporary thing.
I mean, is this only because he didn't get his pay package?
No, no. I think I pointed this out a long time ago. I don't want to hypothesize about this too much in a public space, so I'm just gonna say this once. If you want to get to know him really well, I think one of the best ways to do it is go read his personal text messages that leaked after the Twitter purchase depositions. I guess there was a lot of text messages between him and um, Grimes's father that I think are quite telling about like his thought process, and I think this is my personal opinion. I think he is now surrounded by a lot of old Silicon Valley Republican thinking people who were, you know, a particular way. I think he got burned by Jack Dorsey, really getting him to buy Bitcoin first, and then he felt burned by that, and then he felt burned by him convincing him to like buy Twitter at a certain price, and then not sticking around. Like I think there's a lot of like little things that have happened there, and in my personal opinion, people are really a reflection of the people they surround themselves with, and right now it's getting a little bit better. I find it's hopeful. I forget the name of the Airbnb co-founder, but he's a good person from what I've heard. Andreessen's not the worst. That's good too. Um, so I think, yeah, if you want to see where he's going to go, look at who he's surrounding himself with. I don't think it's all bad. I just want to be clear. If you say
Yeah,
negatives, I'll say positives. You say positives, I'll say negatives.
yeah. All right. Yeah. I mean, if I could do one thing differently in the last few years, like one of the things I would have done differently is reading those lawsuit documents, like the short sellers were reading, and I just completely ignore them.
Yeah, I think that's important. Also, you know, I think when you hear a lot of employees say something like Drew Bagliano shouldn't have been let go, or you hear people say like JB was like the soul, and even Elon started to admit it eventually, there is some factor of like, it's not like he's not made mistakes, right? And so the question is he learning from those mistakes? And I think he is. So there is that. He's going to keep making mistakes, and he's going to make more mistakes now. But in my opinion, his heart is in the right place. He may not always have all the faculties that we wish he has, but he's a human being with obviously, some limitations that may be different than others, but he does have those things going on.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So you said you're impressed by Claude. You said Gemini, DeepSeek, Claude are all big players now.
Yeah, so
ChatGPT is at the
Claude
bottom.
is very expensive. Claude is extremely expensive. However, unlike OpenAI, they're still doing things that are unique. So I think the way Claude has stayed on top is they're pushing the feature stuff forward, right? Like they were the first one to do an operator. They're the first one now to do live UI generation in responses. So I think they're pushing the envelope probably through necessity in terms of like innovating. Unfortunately, the others can copy them. So like I don't know if like I would invest in them personally, but if I was investing in the team, that would be the team I would want. I would want pieces. Like the ideal thing would be like you take X, you take Google's, hardware and data, and you take Anthropic's team.
You think X has the best data?
No, no, they have real time data, but they do have a big platform. I mean, if I had to pick just one, there's only one super vertically integrated company. It's either going to
Right.
be DeepSeek or Google at that point.
Right. Um, we had talked about this before. Do you see real-time data as a material advantage?
Never did. No.
Yeah, I know you never did, but Elon seems to disagree with that. So, would you? Why do you think he disagrees with you on that?
I think he has a company that is a differentiator, so he has to kind of pump it as an important differentiation.
Okay. Why is that big tech mogul still investing in OpenAI so much money? I forget his name. Sasa or what? Sama Masa?
Sam Altman? What are you talking about?
No. Hold on. Masa, I think.
I don't know who that was.
I'm so tired. It's a Friday. SoftBank.
Oh, SoftBank has made legendarily bad investments. I will reserve my opinions on that.
Masa. Yeah. I mean, the guy is one of the world's richest people, so he can't be that bad in investing. But I mean, he did invest in obviously work. What was that company's name? Man, I'm so tired.
Workplace or whatever it
Yeah,
was. Works.
whatever,
I know what you're talking
whatever
about.
that was. Yeah, Work Week or no one even remembers. But apparently, that was like the biggest.
Rent a Cubicle, I think was the name of the company.
Yes. Okay. All right. So you want to talk about Nvidia a little bit?
Sure. I can give you another like 15 minutes and
Okay.
then gotta bounce. So I think NVIDIA would be a fun topic to go over. However you want to
Did
go.
you read my both articles?
I read one of them.
Okay.
I don't think I read your most recent one.
What did you think of the earnings release? Earnings release, earnings call.
I haven't had the time. I was going to listen to the full thing this weekend. I've only looked at summaries, so I will admit that right off the bat. My understanding is it's not like super negative, but it's flat. Is that a accurate
No,
depiction? Okay, well then I need to go listen to the earnings call,
I mean the
the source
mainstream.
material before we can have a deep conversation.
I don't think listening to earnings call is going to change much. But so in my article, I mean you can't read the article, but in my article I said their revenue growth, the outlook was worse than people expected. Both the revenue growth and the gross margin was worse than people expected.
Oh, that's sucks to be them. They should expect that. They should expect that even more going forward.
Yeah, exactly. So my guess is that they're so focused on this, you know, low to mid 70s gross margin that they're making the same mistake that Rivian did. So focused on the gross margin that they're making um, I think they're going to keep pricing high, so we're going to see the revenue growth number plunge. So I was forecasting revenue growth kind of coming down 70%, 60%. This is year-over-year revenue growth by quarter. So 70%, 60%, 50%, 40%. And I revised my forecast in the second article to kind of just match their outlook for the next quarter and then reduce my revenue growth rates for the following quarters because they're not talking about revenue growth rate. The only things they're talking about is one, gross margin for the next couple of quarters out. They say after Blackwell ramps, our gross margin will return to mid 70s. And then the second thing the CEO is talking about is long-term TAM. Okay, long-term TAM. They talk. Those are the two things they focus on. But just because the TAM is big doesn't mean NVIDIA is going to be the only player or the primary player, etc. We see how leadership can change so fast in these things. More so on the software front than the hardware front, I guess. But there's going to be more startups bringing their products onto market. I think DeepSeek showed that CUDA is not the impermeable moat that people thought it was. And I think as the management team kind of keeps these pricing, Blackwell pricing, etc., high, maybe they hit their gross margin target. I don't know, but the revenue growth number is going to plunge in the coming quarters. I think that's my kind of overall take on. What do you think?
Sorry, I had to switch a bunch of screens quicker on mute. Yeah, I agree. In general, I think the only place you and I disagree, I agree with what their focus is. Your perception on what and how they're focusing, I agree on that. This is, by the way, why I agree that I could see Nvidia hitting 100 before I see. I don't even know if Tesla hits 100, so just we have a disagreement there. But I think Nvidia for sure, because I'm pretty happy about this. 2 years ago in your space, I was saying 50% decline. Everybody said I was crazy. We're at what, 30% now? I don't know where we are from that time, but I can continue to see decline. But even then, I said for the next year or two, it could continue to rise, and then drop 50%. Where we are now, I think for the momentary crunch, and I'm not saying this is a lasting thing. I think for the moment, there'll be an increase in demand as people try to run to thinking models. And then they're going to learn the same lesson that they just learned with throwing more and more money at it isn't going to work, right? Just because the scaling laws didn't work.
But see, if that were the case, why would the outlook be worse than market thought?
Because when if there was sustained demand on the GPUs, then I think the cloud providers would buy more GPUs because they can see that if we have these GPUs, there will continue to be demand and we can continue to rent them out. You don't want to buy more GPUs for the next year if you can see in 2 years that demand is going to plummet. So that's why I wanted to talk about that post, right? There is DRAM prices are going up. That's happens all the time whenever compute that post is drawing some weird conclusions because it doesn't mean it's just for GPUs. It could be for many things, DRAMs using CPUs and other things as well. But yes, the bare product, the products that are used to make the chips are getting more expensive because chips overall are getting to become more in demand. That being said, NVIDIA may not be in demand because I was in a space the other day and Sierra and I came up with I think a pretty good metaphor that explains this. And the idea is NVIDIA is really good at making complex pizzas, right? They have all these different toppings. They have more topping selection than every other place. But what has happened in the market is people have realized transformers are great and transformers are just a cheese pizza, right? If you really focus on making your company where you can make all these different toppings, and in the beginning people didn't know what they liked on a pizza, so they're trying all the different things, trying all these different things. The reality now is it's consolidating down to cheese and pepperoni. And if you just have all these competitors that come out and they say, we only make cheese and pepperoni, we don't make all the other stuff, the total market you can capture in just cheese and pepperoni goes down. So while demand will continue to go up in this space, I don't know that NVIDIA gets to capture it all.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, no, like I said, from the beginning, I said, we agree. I just don't know if it's in the near, I could see, I'm just saying, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying I could see in the next quarter, maybe a surprise where they're like, oh, demand picked back up. that doesn't mean it'll be sustained. It could happen. It could happen in the next 3 to 6 months where they go, oh, we got one more big order from Anthropic, or one more big order from, like, you get that one last big order, and then that'll probably be it.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? What do I want to ask you next? I mean, I don't have a lot of questions. Like, I feel like I have a good grasp on NVIDIA, Tesla, AI models. I think that, you've done a good job of distilling your knowledge in me over the last 2 years. Thank you very much.
Are you
And
saying you're a smaller model?
yeah, I think that's obviously true. But
Why, thank you for the compliment. I'm going to go around telling people I have a really big model.
yes, but I cough less, so.
Okay, fine, whatever. If our Secretary of Health is any indication, that's a really healthy sign that I cough more.
Uh-huh. um, okay.
Well, that's good. It's even what's better than having to ask questions. You don't have to ask questions. You
Did
already know.
you
You already know
did
it all.
you I mean, I know I won't ask you some more, but so Waymo I think increased their number of rides by
It did.
20x. So
Yeah.
that's amazing. I mean, I think that Tesla bulls are just completely ignoring how fast Waymo is scaling.
Yeah, I,
And
I saw
so
a couple of posts. Like there was a post about somebody had drone footage of a lot with 2,000 Jaguar I-Paces being fitted for Waymo. So that those cars are obviously coming. There was another post, like I'm trying to dig into the numbers. There was another post that had like the December numbers. So obviously this is not accurate, but applying the numbers from today to the December numbers, it looks like roughly 124 or 135,000, sorry, of the 200,000 rides are happening in San Francisco. So obviously they're not like in every market, which is surprising. I thought maybe the Uber deal with Phoenix would have led to more, but when I tried to do the utilization, I got roughly 24 rides per car per day. Um, so I mean, it's not bad if you assume like a 12-hour peak period, they're averaging 2 rides per hour. That maybe makes sense, right? Like our average ride is 15 minutes. Maybe it takes you 10 minutes to get to the user.
yeah. Um, do you think so? They applied, I guess Tesla applied for a license in California. Do you think that's going to
Yes.
come in June or later this year, whenever?
Yes. So you have to apply to that permit before you apply to the AV permit. In my opinion, it makes no sense to apply to this permit now if you're not going to apply to the AV permit. They probably also applied to the AV permit. Um, my interpretation of the law, and I could be wrong, is if you, again, I'm not a lawyer, but like, my interpretation of the law is when you apply for the permit, whatever vehicle model you apply for, wherever that model is in the state, you have to report all the interventions. So I wonder, and I wouldn't put it past Elon to do it this way. They might say, well, the model is a Model 3 or a Model Y with unsupervised software installed. And so unless it has that software, we don't need to report it. And that might be how they control where they release the data.
Oh, I see. Okay.
That's my
Um,
guess. But like, let's say that doesn't hold up in court, then they would have the time period between it goes to court, and then they would have to reveal all their intervention data at that point.
yeah. Wave, a quick question from you. Go ahead.
Yes, I say likewise to all the knowledge that it's been shared here. Really appreciate it. Wanted to make a comment. You guys were talking about AI and Google and Gemini and so forth. One thing I've noticed is the one advantage that Google seems to have, they're constantly experimenting with their search, and not only the AI search result that comes up at the top, the AI overview. What I'm beginning to really like as a user interface, they also list uh, follow-up questions or better questions that one should ask. So I'm thinking of someone that maybe hasn't thought something through. And I think that section is really fruitful. And before I used to think that the AI chat bots will take market share from Google, but I think the way they're revise their search and they're constantly changing it to be more relevant and prompting for next questions, it's really useful.
Yeah. Thank you, Wave. All right. Um, Okay, on ChatGPT pricing, Meta, why is the pricing so much higher if inference cost is plunging? They talk about 100x improvement in inference cost. Why is the pricing almost 100 times more?
You're referring to the models, or you're referring to
4.5.
yeah. So 4.5 didn't use thinking models. 4.5, it feels like 4.5 was like a train that had left the station, and they were just like trying everything they could. Like they were basically, unfortunate timing for them, I suppose. Their train left the station on this training run where they were gonna spend a whole bunch of money and a whole bunch of machine resources to train a model. Maybe they were 1 month into the training, right? So way for people to think about this is the way these things work is the training starts as the training run is occurring. At some point, you get the model, right? And
But this
it's
is
not like
inference
one day.
pricing. Inference pricing per million tokens is just 100 times higher than everybody else, even though inference
Yes.
cost is supposed to be coming down 100 times,
It's
right?
because their model is so much larger that like inference pricing is going down for thinking models and for like new chips and stuff like that. But think about it this way: they spent say 3 months training this model, and as soon as it came out the door, its lifespan is very short. So if they're like thinking about how do we recover the cost of
Right.
that huge data
I have
center,
an alternate reason.
sure.
I think that they are trying to go IPO, and they want to show at least a quarter of break even.
So you think they're pricing it this high because they think they can, not because they have to.
Yeah, not because
Okay.
they can, but I think they're kind of like shooting in the dark and see if it works.
Okay. So I mean, if your theory is correct, then we would see the pricing come down in the event that they don't have a bunch of uptake in users, or we
Right.
would see a bunch of users being willing to pay this.
Right. Exactly.
And I
Well,
mean,
I
if
mean,
you look at the
if neither
sentiment of
happens,
influencers, it doesn't seem like people are willing to pay this at all.
right? Exactly. But if any of that happens, let's say they can't find a price where people are willing to pay, and also they take some good uptake so that they can show a positive bottom line or positive gross margin or something before going IPO, then maybe IPO fails.
Yeah,
And
that's what I'm saying. Like, I think Nvidia. I've said this before. I think in your space. I don't recall if I did or didn't. But I think OpenAI is closer to zero than 100 billion.
yeah, but here's the thing, though. I mean, they do have 400 million weekly active users, and none of these people are going to go around and look around, inference pricing for the API before they switch. Most people probably going to stick for the next year or so. Everybody
Yeah,
has
but
heard of
most of those users are
ChatGPT.
free. They're not paying.
I know, but still, that's 400 million users, right? And that's something that other models don't have. Like, how many people use Grok every day or every week?
Totally fair. I'll give you that. So so it's closer to zero than 100 billion because I don't think 100 million users is worth what, $1,000 each.
I don't know. If they go on the IPO today, I bet you a lot of retail investors will buy ChatGPT OpenAI stock.
I don't disagree with you. A bunch of retail investors bought Trump coin. I don't know what to say. There's a lot of money
Exactly.
out there.
Exactly. So, I mean, at the end of the day, they are still the biggest revenue generator on this front, right? And Gemini and Grok are kind of distant second on that front, I think.
I don't know that we know that for sure. It depends on how you qualify revenue generation, right? Because if you count ancillary services and stuff, um, I don't know,
What ancillary services?
cloud compute.
Right. No, I'm talking like raw number of accounts using daily, weekly, monthly, etc. I
Oh,
think
you're just focused on the chat bot, not the
right,
model API.
right.
Okay, yeah, I think in the chat bot space they are winning. I will give you that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what else do they need for an IPO?
Well, maybe it'll work, but it's a tough economy. And Sam has come out and said not only are they losing money, they were actually losing money per pro user.
Right.
Sorry, plus user, whatever.
But
The
that was
20
last year.
$40 a month. Yeah, that was last year before 4.0 and 03 and 01. I don't think the costs have come down.
I see. Because the models have gotten bigger. Okay.
Yeah, the solution OpenAI has been using has not been innovation. It's been throw more money at it.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, like honestly, biggest argument that you have, let's say for example, you're arguing OpenAI doesn't have a share, it could closer to zero. I'm arguing closer to 100 billion. The biggest point that you have is that Microsoft seems to be pulling the plug on them.
Yeah,
And
that's
they
a
know
good point.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah,
When the parent company stops investing,
exactly.
that's a bad sign.
Exactly. So do you see any of these other players going public, like Anthropic
Yeah, I
or
think Anthropic could really, like, you know, as ironic as it would be, Anthropic and OpenAI merging and all the users from OpenAI going to Anthropic would be really good for the users and for Anthropic.
yeah? What about X? Do you see XAI going public?
I don't know. I don't know enough about. I think we've hit my knowledge and expertise barrier.
Yeah. Um, if you had to kind of guesstimate the statement that Grok 3 is the smartest AI in the world, what percent of that statement do you think is hype? Or what percent of everything we've seen from the Grok team and Elon's tweets and all the headlines about Grok 3? Hype versus fact.
As an engineer and from an engineering perspective, I'm going to answer this as 90, 80. I hate this because I've been in other spaces and people keep saying I'm like shitting on this. I know you know where I work, and I work in the industry. I do work for a competitor of Grok. So like biases, alarms, let those go off. I think it's like 70 to 80% hype, and I'm couching it a bit. Like the rationale for me, and I'll give this analogy, and I do know people who have restaurants. When restaurants first open, like most restaurants, use really fresh ingredients. They spend a lot more time and care on how they make the food and all that stuff. Then they get all these great positive Yelp reviews and they get good ratings, and then they start buying cheaper produce. It's kind of the same thing happening right now with this model space. They're spending a ton of resources on all these models and all these things, and then later on, they crank down how much compute they spend per query. And I'm not the only one saying this. There's a lot of other influencers that have pointed this out. We even saw Greg Brockman talk about this with OpenAI when people noticed, hey, what the heck? The quality has started to decline for the same thing I was paying $40 a month for before and now. And he basically said, oh, models, over time, the compute, blah, blah. And he basically, I forget what the tweet was. I have to go find it. But he basically admitted that OpenAI was sharding the compute cost based on how much demand they had. So as they got more users, you get less GPU per query. So, and the same thing is very easy with thinking models, right? You could say, okay, right now you're allowed to think 20 times. Like especially if you look at Grok, it thinks a ton of times. If their user base increased by 10x, maybe they cut that in half. Maybe you don't get as good of a quality because they start reducing how long it thinks.
I see. Interesting. Okay. All right.
This is why I think you always have to look at trade-offs. Engineering is always about trade-offs. If you're looking at one metric like just quality, you're not engineering. You're doing something else.
Absolutely.
You have to look at quality over cost.
Absolutely. Okay.
And by the way, this is why like many of the smaller models are actually better for end users, right? Because it turns out if you don't need a model that's answering like crazy math questions like Putnam tests and all that kind of stuff, and all you need is to like replace a Google search effectively, then maybe you don't need that giant expensive model. Maybe you just need something that costs less.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else I want to talk about in this space?
No, I'm a little bit over time. I can probably hang out for another little bit, but I'm going to be doing other things while I'm hanging out. So
I
just
think that's
heads up.
fine. That's totally fine. So the other thing I want to kind of hash out is you
Oh,
said you
sorry.
don't.
Something just came up. I just saw an Andre Karpathy tweet real time. I don't know if he's in this space or not, but funny thing he just said is Claude is the funniest model by far after he just did a whole bunch of testing with a bunch of things. So
Yeah,
humor is a way of detecting who is smart, right? And many people say that.
as one measure, exactly.
Yeah. So in the race of humor, according to Andre Karpathy, Claude is a better athlete. But the argument I would make is it's kind of like, when people used to debate who would win, this player or that player, and they have their favorite like competitions. That means that they're both great.
Yeah. Why didn't he go to work at XAI, you think?
I think you already know my answer from a private conversation we've had before, so I'll skip the answer in a public space.
Okay. Okay. All right. Hold on. 1 second. I'll DM you. Okay, but
Let's just say this: when people leave companies after they vest, that's
yeah,
like it's not like they didn't get more money, right? Like he's got a ton of money. He doesn't need to work. So there's a correlation with how much shit you're willing to take and how much money you have. Sorry, inverse
right,
correlation.
right,
Inverse correlation with it.
right. That makes sense. Okay. All right. The other thing I want to kind of hash out is Tesla. You said you don't see Tesla going down to 100. What gives you confidence that it won't go down to 100? Because I actually feel pretty comfortable in that position.
I don't think Tesla will go down 100 just because it's hit resistance many times before. I do see the current, and I think this is where you and I disagree. So I'm just trying to focus on the part. I think we're going to see rate cuts sooner than the market thinks, or the general market thinks at the moment, and therefore I think Tesla will do well. I would personally like to see oil subsidies go away and EV credits go away. I don't know if you can pull that off, but if somehow we do see either through Doge, which I don't think is the case, but if we see like the quantitative tightening actually start, I think it's roughly $3 trillion on the balance sheet and mortgage-backed securities. Start tightening that, that'll create deflationary pressure. That'll lead to interest rate cuts. And right now, I think the only thing preventing that from happening is the tariff rhetoric, which who knows how long that will continue for. But I think fear is a larger multiplier on these things. So I don't think long term that fear lasts. I think either people get used to it and they go, "Oh, he's just saying these things and it's not really affecting the economy," or it has an effect on the economy and he backs off. One or the other.
I mean, they have been tightening, doing quantitative tightening and reducing the size of the balance sheet. You know that, right?
Just not super aggressively, right? Like I think the rate at which they're going right now, it'll take them like 36 cycles, right? 36 quarters, if I remember correctly.
Well, they're not going to go all the way down to zero. I think there's like a level of reserves they're trying to sustain. I think they're closer to ending quantitative tightening than you realize.
Wait, I thought Section 13 was like supposed to be a temporary thing, and they haven't even fully unwound the 2007 MBS that they took on, right? So, in my personal opinion, they should unwind everything that is not a treasury.
Hmm. Well, that would increase mortgage rates so much that, I mean, the housing market
Yeah,
is already dead. So,
yeah. I mean, okay, my personal opinion on that: states should subsidize construction of homes and home buying, like new home buying, because it is like investing in property tax that they get to collect later.
okay. Okay, so you're saying, I mean, let's go back to Tesla. You're saying if the interest rates start coming down, so you expect interest rates to start coming down soon. When that happens, you expect demand for Teslas to increase. I agree that I think demand for cars will increase, but I don't know if that incremental demand is going to go to Tesla. I don't think we can conclude that, especially outside the US. I think BYD is producing just as good, if not better, cars now with free autonomy, some level of free autonomy, and at half the prices. So any sort of money supply increase around the world, I think, is going to go to the better players, which appear to be Chinese players, or players with hybrid production like Toyota and BYD and Ford and GM. So I'm not convinced that the masses are ready to adopt Teslas right now.
Yeah, I think the main place where we have a disagreement there is I do think autonomy lends itself to EVs more than non-EVs. I think the profit margins on autonomy will be high, and maybe let's try this theory. I think soon people are going to realize there's not a lot of great places to invest in AI, and autonomy is one of them. And so there'll be a rush to kind of like how a lot of people just invest in Apple because they don't know what else to invest in. I think there'll be an overvaluation in the most obvious play.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think autonomous is going to lead to massive profits. I mean, especially after the news that BYD is including, level 2 plus on $10,000 cars, level 3, level 4 on, level 3 on, Model 3, Model Y level, and level 4 on Model X, Model S level type of cars for free.
I know
So,
I know they're
oh,
saying that.
if
I
the
know
if the most voluminous car manufacturer includes your capability or even a little less capable autonomy for free on their cars, you just don't stand a chance in terms of generating profits.
I think that was true until people start experiencing side by side comparisons. I do think that the Tesla FSD quality is going to end up being much better because we're already kind of seeing that from some of the influencers in China. Although
How
it
do
could
you
be high.
define much better?
There's a psychological aspect to when you're in the car and it feels very comfortable and safe. I don't know how to describe it beyond that.
I don't think so.
I, I experienced it.
And here's the thing. That statement assumes BYD won't improve the comforts. Like, is there any sort of reason why Waymo or BYD's LiDAR-based systems cannot match, or at least come close that you can't even feel the difference that the FSD system may have a few years on the line?
No, I'm not saying that they won't. And again, remember, I have never been in the position, I've never had the opinion that Tesla was going to capture the whole market. I always was of the opinion that there would be multiple players. So my personal valuation is not changing because I've always had that assumption.
Okay, so you do think BYD and Waymo will eventually feel as comfortable, like the ride quality is going to
Yeah,
feel as comfortable
it's like Coca-Cola and Pepsi.
right?
There's also a Dr. Pepper that's around, or whatever the third brand might be, PC Cola.
Well, it's not the same thing because taste is a little different, right? Like people get addicted to a certain taste. So
So I think it's the same with Uber and Lyft. Like in the beginning, people used to compare pricing, and then at some point they just kind of go, "Oh, well, that one tends to be cheaper. That's the one I just opened," and they stop comparing pricing. They get lazy.
yeah, okay, but I agree with you that eventually there's going to be multiple players. But where I disagree with you is that any one of those players is going to be able to charge a massive economic profit.
So why do you think Waymo is able to charge the pricing they're able to charge right now?
Why is Waymo able to charge the prices? What do you mean?
So Waymo charges basically the same prices as Uber right now. They
Okay.
have not lowered the pricing at all, and they're still getting a lot of rides.
Mm-hmm.
So like this is the thing that I disagree with Bulls on often when I'm doing the math anyway. Hey, I don't think we're going to see a massive reduction in cost because there's already been a market that shows consumers are willing to pay a certain price per ride. And I don't think cutting taxi rides in half necessarily gets you far more users. However, I can see with the cheaper car model and cheaper electricity, and I do think that's where Tesla should have an advantage because it's purely EV. If they go that route and they have the engineering efficiencies, which I think they have, then they can go after things like bus rides and actually expand the market that way. Maybe. I think that's where
So
it
then, well,
comes
how
in.
do you explain the rumors that are coming out that the service that's going to start in California is going to be free?
That's not surprising to me because all the other car companies, when they first released it, they also had a free thing. I think it might be because of legal reasons or just to like get people to start using it at first.
Okay, so you're saying that after that's completed, they're going to start charging about $2, $3 a mile, Tesla will.
Yeah, yeah.
But now, why wouldn't Waymo, like, let's say Tesla says 3, why wouldn't
Yeah.
Waymo drop to 2.5?
Yeah, there could be a pricing war in theory, but
Mhm.
it could also just be that they're both eating Uber's lunch, and so they don't need to compete against each other
I
for a
mean,
while.
Uber can do the same thing because you're literally just looking at, you know, a, minimum wage human driver plus a hybrid or an EV. So,
But let me see if I can give an analogy. The fragrance market we know has really high margins, right? How come fragrance companies don't compete by lowering prices all the time?
but that's, I think, that again goes back to Coca-Cola Pepsi thing because that's a preference thing, right?
No, I don't think so. I think it's just There are
This
certain
is more of a
markets.
utility.
I think there's certain markets where demand is kind of like it plateaus. Like you can't just keep cutting prices and people buy. Like you could make cars $1. There's still be a limit to how many cars people will buy. At a certain
Right.
point, they'll be like having another big chunk of metal in my driveway is just
Right.
annoying.
Hmm.
So there is natural plateaus to these things, right? And I think there's a plateau to rider demand, and I don't think cutting like this is a good question, right? If you cut the prices for the taxi rides in half, do you generate more than double the demand? If you don't, then you don't cut the prices in half.
Hmm. Of course, yes, I agree. Unless there might be other, but anyway, when do you think Tesla will have 100,000 driverless robotaxis on the roads globally?
I'm terrible with timelines. I don't know. I'm just gonna go with I don't know. I
And
I
same
don't know.
answer for 10,000?
Yeah, no timeline answer. No timelines in your spaces, especially. I'm gonna
Yeah.
pass.
Yeah, I don't see it happening before 5 years, maybe 10 years.
I disagree with you on that statement, but I won't give you a more precise timeline.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And then the things like, unless you can say a year out, it's really hard to say where the competition is going to be at that point. Like if it's 5, 10 years out, I think it's hard to say where Waymo is going to be, where the Chinese players are going to be,
Completely agree.
Uber is going to be. So I just don't see it.
Again, I don't think the entire market needs to be owned by one player. I don't think that will happen even.
I
But
agree, but the thing is, like, if we can't foresee this, like the specifics of this thing, a year, 2 years from now, that's not going to stall a fall in Tesla share prices. So back to my original question, what gives you confidence that the stock isn't going to drop below $100 per share?
so we can reverse it out a bit, right? So at $100 a share, it's worth about a third of $1 trillion, right?
Right.
And I know this is not the best way to compare things, but let's compare it to another company. Um, I think Google is what 1.5 trillion in their annual
Google
revenues.
has insane margins. Tesla doesn't have
Yes.
them. Tesla is not profitable.
Well, I was going to get there. I was going to say, like, how much profit does Google make per year?
It makes, I mean, even if it makes anything versus Tesla doesn't make anything.
No, but like, I guess what I'm trying to get to is, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, but I think it's not a question of, will the company make money? It's a question of like, what are all the places I can invest that makes money? This one seems like a solid play. If the costs are such that they're even making 20% margins, I think, yeah, I think it can justify $100 at least a share. I mean, remember they even have like what, $10 or $20 in cash.
Um, well, I don't necessarily agree with that. I'll get back to the cash comment, but Google makes $100 billion a year. Tesla doesn't make any money.
Revenue or profit?
Profit. Tesla doesn't make any money.
Okay. So
Mhm.
so from 1.5 down to 300, we take that divided by 5. You're saying they're not going to make 20 billion a year.
Sorry, how did you get to 20?
If Google has 100 billion in profit,
Yeah.
and that justifies a 5x value
Hmm.
compared to where Tesla would be at $100,
Hmm.
then we can take that 100 billion, divide by 5, and get to 20 billion. 'Cause then they'd be kind of comparable, right? In terms of ROI.
Let me just see. If they have the same growth prospects, then sure.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's also true either. Like Google is growing. In the last, several quarters, they grew double digits. Tesla is shrinking.
I
Tesla
mean,
automotive is shrinking.
I think we just disagree on the fundamental growth argument too. I think when interest rates come down, Tesla's really valuable.
Yeah, that's the crux of the disagreement. What happens when the interest rates come down? Which, by the way, we're assuming they're going to come down. I don't think they're going to come down as fast as you think, but for the reasons I discussed actually earlier this episode.
Yeah, no, I think
But
that's the crux of our
let's say
disagreement.
next year interest rates came down 1%, 2%. What happens to Tesla demand? I don't think it's going to be as high as you think. I think the
I guess
demand is going to go to
that would be a
other.
good way for us to like figure out if we have the same equations in our head.
Mhm.
We may disagree on the assumptions, but if autonomy does work within a year, if interest rates do come down within a year back to like 3 to 4%.
I mean, if my grandmother had wheels, she would be a bike.
I mean, I'm just saying one way to do these kinds of like things from an engineering perspective is to figure out, do we have the same scaling function? Do we have the same like function? Because the question is, are we disagreeing on the function or the assumptions? And right now we're having a debate where we don't know which of the two to debate. And so I was just trying to like, isolate the variables.
Yeah. No, I think the variables. I think we agree on the variables.
You think we just disagree on the variables? Yeah, I think that's the case too.
No, I think we agree on the variables. I think we just disagree on the factors in front of the variables.
Okay, so you agree that interest rates are going to come down in a year and autonomy is going to get down in a year?
No,
Okay, there we go.
I agree that autonomy is going to happen at some point, and interest rates are going to come down
Oh,
at
I see
some
how you're
point,
defining
and
the
both
okay.
matter.
You're
Yeah,
saying
that both matter.
the scaling changes because of we disagree on when. Fair, agreed.
Right, exactly. Farmer George asks, could Neuralink potentially achieve the capabilities depicted in the television series Severance?
Not as it works today. The rationale in my explanation for that is we do not have an understanding of where the psyche is, any of that. All Neuralink is doing is the reason why they're focusing on paraplegics and blind folks and people who have like missing stuff is because we really understand the sensory cortex, the motor cortex, and the visual cortex pretty well, and we know where it is. So when you are missing functionality, you have basically a bunch of well, not empty, but like unused neurons, and so we can tap into those neurons and reactivate them. To do something like severance, it would require reaching into functional neurons and changing them, which I don't think we have any clue how to do today.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, in my mind, vision only autonomy is 5 to 10 years away, and not shorter than 5, and probably not longer than 10, but possible. And then interest rates coming down, I think it's going to happen at some point, but I just don't see it in the next 6 months to a year.
What variables would you need to see change in order to say the current price is justified?
Yeah, sure, I got you.
Only two variables is the either autonomy or interest rates are the only two I'm concerned with in terms of time.
Okay, autonomy, like we would have to see an update like FST 14, 15, whatever. That gets us to 99.9999%. That's one. And then two, I just don't think interest rates is going to help Tesla that much. I don't think interest rates coming down is going to help Tesla that much. I mean, the brand.
Okay, so you don't think, so that's fair. Okay, so you think even if interest rates came down to zero, the stock price would not be justified?
Well, I think in that case, you might see some more like, GameStop type of demand on the stock because it is a popular stock. But I just don't think the fundamentals will be there to support the company.
Okay, I mean, stock prices are a function of interest rates, so I agree with you.
I think Tesla's going to have a tough time ramping production back up to its capacity. Like even if this car comes out at $30,000, the profit margin is not going to be 25%.
See, what I want to see, just so I think we can put it on cards on the table, I want to see them ramp the unbox process. I've said this for 2 years almost, like since the moment it came out. That's the process I've been waiting for. That's the key manufacturing advantage they were supposed to have. I was confused why they just like
Everybody else
published it
can do
and
that
didn't do it.
too. There's nothing special about Tesla's manufacturing that they can do on box and the others can't. There are already companies
I
talking about
disagree if they have patents.
what patents?
You can patent
Ordering.
stiff cables. They have patents around stiff cables. They have patents a few things. The idea of doing a loop within the car. There are a lot of things you can patent in that process.
Well, Elon said our patents are yours.
Mm-mm. That wasn't true for the manufacturing. That was only true for supercharging.
Okay. And then, yeah. I mean, did you foresee BYD passing Tesla on all these fronts?
No, I didn't. And in fact, I remember when Warren Buffett invested in BYD, and we were like, "Oh, there's no next Tesla. There's no next Tesla." At that time, I was in the same belief, and I feel really dumb for doubting Warren Buffett because he knew when to get in and he knew when to get out. He may have missed the run up on Tesla, but he didn't miss the run up on BYD.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And arguably, it's better to get the second one than the first one because
What do you
the
think
first one
about
was locked in.
Unitree?
I think they're the most compelling competitor to Optimus. Maybe Figure, but they're definitely there.
They're already producing and selling humanoids.
Yeah. What do they do though?
They stand.
Yeah,
They do,
the
they do kung
complexity
fu.
the complexity is in the utility of these things, and I think people are really underestimating. Like, if you could have a human who is really dumb but had a fantastic body, this is not for sexual purposes. This is just for like assistant purposes. A human that's really dumb but has a fantastic body, or one that has an okay body but a fantastic mind. Most people would select the latter because you can still get a lot of things done with a really brilliant mind.
But
And so I think
why would the mind be any worse than what Tesla Optimus can do? I mean, look at what DeepSeek was able to achieve.
I don't know that they are at Grok, and DeepSeek is got a lot of asterisks on it. It's like out of all the AIs that you look at that screen, like when we're comparing them, if somebody came out and said that athlete was using steroids, that's gonna be DeepSeek. Their numbers are like just the way they presented some stuff were very suspect.
So you're telling me that no human is going to be able to match Optimus's mind?
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying DeepSeek. Elon has demonstrated he knows how to build a mind.
How? Would you by Grok? You mean?
Yeah, exactly. The infrastructure necessary to build Grok is more impressive than Grok.
But it hasn't resulted in hundreds of millions of people using your product. So what does it matter?
I mean, you and I look at the world differently. I'm looking at the engineering accomplishment. You're looking at the stock. I'm saying in the future, engineering accomplishments will eventually turn into profit.
So you're telling me hundreds of millions of people eventually will use Grok?
No, I'm saying hundreds of millions of people will eventually use Optimus, which might use Grok.
Right. And you don't want to talk in timelines. Hundreds of millions of Optimus. I think that's a stretch.
Given enough time, I don't think so.
Elon's going to be 70 by then. He's gonna
Hey, the
he's gonna
CEO
have,
of Claude and the CEO of DeepMind are talking about curing cancer. Like our
he's
lifetimes might extend a lot.
he's going to be on his 50th kids and 25th lawsuits with his baby mamas. He's going to be focusing on producing hundreds of
That
millions of
man could have
Optimus.
3 kids every single day.
He has
he wouldn't
he
go
has
broke.
more kids than Optimus right now.
I don't know if that's true. He definitely has more than 15 Optimus.
I don't know.
That were running around at
Yeah.
the Robotaxi day.
One of our speakers a few days ago made a prediction that Elon will quit Tesla in a couple of years, 2 years or so. What do you think?
I think that would actually be good. Put JB back in charge.
How old is he?
I don't know, probably same age. Roughly. I don't know. I don't know how old JB is.
JB Strobel is 49 years old, just a few years younger. He's not going to come back to CEO.
Maybe.
And Elon is not
He's
going to
very
run.
passionate about the project in the space.
Elon is not going to run Optimus at 60 plus.
I don't know, man. I think he could have retired a long time ago and he didn't do it. Why would he do it at a later age?
Well, I mean, he is a CEO and a 10%, owner. If he's not kicked out, why the fuck should we retire?
Oh, I don't know that like I think if he found someone else was more passionate in running it and his attention was going towards maybe Mars and he just didn't have enough time to do it, he might at that point like he put Glenn Shotwell in charge.
I don't think he's worried about Tesla going to $200-300 billion market cap as much as people think he is.
I don't think he cares about that at all. I think
Because he's going to be the richest
Tesla's
person
his
either way.
cash bank, and as soon as Starlink and SpaceX are his cash bank, he won't care about Tesla anymore.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, he has majority ownership in other companies. So, Robert Roth.
Yep.
Yeah. When will Optimus replace a farm worker?
I think John Deere is replacing farm workers already.
So you don't think they're going to play in that market?
Yeah, I think humanoid robots are great for certain things, but dishwashers are more efficient than humanoids washing dishes in a sink, for example. Sometimes specialization is good.
Yeah, and that's true for a lot of things, like even in the manufacturing sector.
I think manufacturing is the one place where I disagree with you, because it's really expensive to set up really expensive production lines, and then when you iterate, you have to like tear the whole line down, and you have to see if you got all your money back out of what you spent on it. So having robots that you can generalize to other things is more valuable. But specific use cases like farming is never going away. Unloading a vehicle, never going away. Washing dishes, probably never going away. Those specific use cases where you're like, this is never going away, versus manufacturing a car where you're like, we know that at some point we're going to stop making this particular car model. I think that's different.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Anybody? Any questions, comments, any other topics you want to discuss? I'm dead tired. Meta, anything else on your mind?
I apparently can't handle spice as much as I used to be able to. Nothing related to the space. But that's anything else on my mind? Yeah, that's on my mind.
Yeah.
I'll see you later.
All right. Sounds good. Take care, everybody. Enjoy your weekends and chat next time.